Decades ago, parents of stillborn infants were given little to no information about their baby's final resting place.
They didn't want to kind of give you the time to make this baby real to you, because I think they thought that mentally you'd be better, you know, just forgetting about this and moving on.
Your mum is here.
If the baby didn't breathe at all, then that baby would be buried with another person.
I never dreamt I would be looking for the babies of so many other people and having a great deal of success.
There are at least 89,000 stillborn babies buried in mass graves around the country. But not all missing babies have been found.
She's got to be somewhere. Somebody must know. There must be some record somewhere of what's happened to her.
For 3 years, we've been investigating the impact and consequences of practices of the past relating to stillbirth. It all started with Lillian Thorpe.
Little love.
6 decades ago, in November 1961, Lillian gave birth to a stillborn baby boy.
Said it was a boy, and I couldn't see it because it had been dead 2 days. You know, it was terrible.
She gave birth to her baby a month earlier than he was due. From day one, Lillian kept the sadness within and never talked about what happened.
It was always inside. It was inside when we coming out of hospital from me having the baby. It was always inside me. Even my friends didn't know what had happened. Put in a ward where there's 18 babies and you haven't got one. And that's what's affected me a lot.
Lillian always believed her baby boy had, as she put it, been thrown away.
Your mum is here. Now I know where he is, don't I? I wish I'd have seen him.
A search of the burial records revealed an entry for Lillian's baby boy. The record had been in the public ledgers all along. Stillborn infant of George and Lillian Thorpe. But they hadn't been told anything about the burial. At the time, hospitals dealt with the arrangements after a stillbirth.
Yeah, I've spent a lot of time upset every time I've talked about it. I'm a bit better today, I think. Probably because he's here. Do you know, and it's made a difference. Little love.
Just 16 months after Lillian was reunited with her baby and his final resting place, she passed away.
Bye-bye, darling.
But her brave decision to share her story has inspired many others to try and find their own missing babies. After hearing Lillian's story, Gina Jacobs was inspired to begin a search for her own stillborn baby boy, born in February 1969. Gina remembers the silence.
I wanted to see him. They wouldn't let me see him. They seemed to think that if I didn't see him, I'd get over it better. And the years passed, and I always wanted to know where that baby was. It took me 53 years and that programme to find my baby.
A search of the public burial records held at her local cemetery revealed that her baby had been laid to rest with 62 others. Now Gina cycles there every week to visit her son, who she's named Robert.
He always lived in my heart, and in my heart I called him Robbers, but the name was never acknowledged because nobody ever asked me. The feeling to stand here and know that my baby is here, I actually feel happy because I know where he is.
80-year-old Gina has gone on to dedicate her time to helping others, finding the final resting places of more than 60 missing babies. She's also campaigned for a memorial to give everyone a place to go and remember.
To have this memorial to our babies, it's like at last they're having the dignity and respect that they never had back in the day when they were born sleeping. I never dreamt I would be looking for the babies of so many other people and having a great deal of success. My most favourite words to say are, "Your baby is found."
From the spare room of her home, she set up and runs an online support group to help others who've been affected.
More people by the day are asking to join, so it's becoming more powerful, really.
And Gina is determined to make a change. Now she's calling for names to be added to the stillbirth register retrospectively.
Just to have it put on that register would mean so much. That in itself would be an acknowledgement, wouldn't it, really? But because these babies had not been christened, it seems to boil down to that. They were not allowed a Christian name. And, you know, who was denied a Christian name? I mean, it's like a nation without its language. What is a person without a Christian name?
Before the mid-1980s, stillborn babies were usually buried in shared graves in unconsecrated ground, but parents weren't told. Gina believes there are around 1,000 other babies buried here in surrounding ground.
Now I kind of think it's quite nice that the babies are together in one way. It's sort of nice. If we'd only have been told the truth.
The issue has gained national attention, with the work Gina has carried out being recognised in Parliament.
One of the most incredible things about doing this job is meeting people like Georgina who have suffered tragedy in their lives, but then use that to campaign and inspire and bring about a better life for everyone else.
One of the women Gina has helped is Betty Rawsthorne.
Blessed art thou amongst women.
Betty gave birth to 3 stillborn babies. Gina has helped find 2 of them using public burial records.
Amen.
I want to ask you, Betty, first of all, how it feels to finally be at your baby's resting place.
Oh, it feels wonderful. I never forgot them. You never forget.
I mean, she's carried those babies with her for all these years. I feel so joyful that Bessie has found where her 2 babies are, but we have to find that 3rd baby.
Right, sit down.
Bereaved father Sean O'Grady is also still looking for his baby girl's resting place. He too has been helped by Gina. In 1982, 3 years after their wedding, Sean and his late wife Susan were expecting their first baby. At nearly 8 months pregnant, Susan became dangerously unwell with preeclampsia.
My options was to allow him to deliver the baby, or we would lose the baby and Susan. So I didn't have a choice, I had to allow him to deliver the baby. They said the baby possibly could be born live, but wouldn't survive more than an hour. But they never come back and told us if the baby was alive or if it was stillborn. Then eventually they took me into the room with Susan, who was still unconscious. After a few hours she did come round, and the first words were to me, "Well, at least the babe's okay." And I had to explain to her that she'd lost the baby. I thought they would have explained at least what had exactly had happened, but there was no point at any time did they come and explain to us what had gone on, what the baby was or anything. Somebody did say the baby would be buried with somebody unknown, but they couldn't give me information, couldn't give us information what would happen with the baby.
10 years passed. The couple went on to have 4 more girls, but they never forgot their firstborn. Then in 1992, Susan was treated in hospital for an unrelated condition. It was only then that she discovered the gender of her firstborn baby.
They left her notes at the side of her bed, and she read through her notes and found out that she had been having a girl. She would have had a girl. So at that point she named her Rebecca. She wanted to be able to find her. She was hoping that at one day we would find what happened to her, where she was. And she says they've only to put a flower down on a grave just to remember her.
Susan died in 2003, aged just 45.
I made her a promise when she was dying that I would continue to look for her. I am determined now to carry on and find where she's been buried so I can keep my promise to my wife.
There's no record of the baby's birth or death, and the family can't find a burial record either.
She's got to be somewhere. Somebody must know. There must be some record somewhere of what's happened to her.
Sean's now applied for a stillbirth certificate, but says he'll never give up the search for his baby girl. Just under a decade earlier, in 1975, another family experienced the same loss.
She examined me, the nurse, and she said, "I suppose you realise the baby's dead," which was a shock, because I didn't know the baby was dead, because I still thought I could feel it moving. Anyway, I said to her, "Well, what do I do now?" And she said, "Oh, nothing, just go home, it'll probably abort itself."
In the end, Lynn had to deliver her baby stillborn at full term.
As it was being born, I went to look and she just went like that, turned my head away and said, "Don't look." And then they just took it away. They put a sheet over the bedpan and took it away. And she said, "You need to go into theatre." When I woke up the next morning, and then the doctors came round and they just said to me, "Oh yeah, you can go home today. Just go home and forget about it."
And when I got there, they said the same to me, "Take her home and forget about it."
Forget about it.
Oh.
Yeah.
Could you forget about it?
No.
And that day was our wedding anniversary.
Have you ever forgotten about it?
No.
No.
3 years passed and the couple went on to have another baby, a girl. They were overjoyed when they went to register her, but their joy turned to shock.
The lady who was doing the registrar thing, she said, "Why didn't you get your son registered?" So we just looked at each other and said, "Well, we haven't got a son." I said, "It was born on the 15th of August. I mean, oh, he was stillborn." And she went, "Well, you should have had a birth certificate, a death certificate and a burial."
The registrar's question was the first time anyone had ever acknowledged what had happened.
Every year, on the 15th of August, we always wish him happy birthday, don't we? Sorry. He would be 50 next year.
Despite having the help of both their daughter and Gina, they've been unable to find their baby.
It's horrible. It's horrible. It really is. It's at the back of your mind all the time. I wonder where he is. I'd just like some closure. Even if it was okay, he's being buried in a mass grave, we could just go and put some flowers down.
A Freedom of Information request revealed there are at least 89,000 stillborn babies buried in mass graves around the country. But not all authorities were able to respond to the request, so the actual figure is likely to be much higher. In 2024, the discovery of a mass grave was made by a woman from Oldham while she was searching for the resting place of her twin brothers. She too had been inspired to search after watching Gina's story. In the process, she found the grave contained more than 270 babies and young children and 29 adults. Burying stillborn infants in shared graves was a practice of the past. Mass graves like these exist up and down the country, but marking these areas is often restricted because the graves are shared. It means many of those who have successfully found their baby's resting place have been unable to formally mark it. Yvonne Beasley was told that she couldn't mark her baby's grave after her first pregnancy ended in stillbirth in 1986.
This radiologist actually turned the scanner on, never spoke a word to me, just scanned me and just stood up and said, "I'm sorry, the baby's dead." And then she walked out of the room.
Yvonne was told she would have to give birth to her baby.
He was born and they whisked him away. And all the time I was just like, I've got to see him, I've got to see him, I need to see him.
Yvonne was allowed to see her baby.
They'd wrapped him in all these blankets, and they brought him in, and I opened up the blankets and looked at his little hands and everything. He was absolutely perfect, and he just looked as though he was sleeping.
She had a few precious minutes with him.
They didn't want to kind of give you the time to make this baby real to you, because I think they thought that mentally you'd be better, just forgetting about this and moving on.
As well as being given the chance to see her baby, Yvonne was included in discussions about what might happen next. A senior midwife came to talk to her.
And she said, we have a baby garden in Ernstone Cemetery, and she says, it's where all the babies are buried. She drew this picture in my mind of this gorgeous area where only babies were buried, and she said, he'll be with all the other babies. And we thought, yeah, we like that.
Her baby was buried here in an unmarked area of ground. The area couldn't be officially marked with a headstone, Yvonne was told, because it was unconsecrated and shared with others.
This area was grass, it was just grass. But of course I knew where he was. And over the years, I'd noticed that parents were putting homemade crosses on the area, and I thought, there's a need for that.
So Yvonne began a campaign to allow families to formally mark the area their loved ones lay. She met with the local authority.
They said, but it's historical, it's an unmarked plot. And I said, well, obviously back in the day, when mums were not encouraged to make these babies real, that would be fine. But that's not the case anymore. So, there's a disconnect.
It was slow progress, but Yvonne continued in her campaign. And that's when Yvonne discovered the truth about exactly where her baby had been buried and with who.
I went to Dunham Lawn Cemetery where all the records were, and in the process of actually talking to the registrar about this area, I asked the question, do you know where all the babies are? Because it's grass. And he said, oh yes, we do, we keep records. So he showed me the map, and he actually showed me where Adam was buried.
Baby Adam was in a grave with 4 unnamed adults and 6 other babies.
So I said, well, that was never told to us. So my understanding was it was a baby garden, and they were, well, yes and no. I think it took me quite a while to process it. I was stunned.
Yvonne's relentless campaigning was successful, and Trafford Council agreed to install these headstones in this mass grave area.
I was determined. It didn't make sense to me that being told, well, it's the way it's always been. With a bit of determination, there is no reason whatsoever why authorities can say, oh, it's just unconsecrated ground, and you'll have to stick with what's there.
And Yvonne's push for change didn't end there. She also met with the hospital where she delivered Adam and shared her findings with them.
And I said, are you aware that this is, when you're actually saying to mums that this is a baby garden, it's not? And she said, well, she showed me. So I was showing her the maps, and she was like, Yvonne, we had no idea that this was the case. And she said, and your findings will now form a part of how I'm going to deal with parents in the future.
When Yvonne had her baby, things had started to change. But in the years prior, it seems even nurses and midwives were in the dark. Gloria is a former nurse. She trained as a midwife in 1970.
I was told when I delivered a baby to make sure whether that baby breathed. If it took one breath, it was a live birth, and would then have a funeral and obviously registered as a live birth. If the baby didn't breathe at all, then that baby would be buried with another person. I was told that by a senior midwife who would be with me when I was delivering the baby. And they told me that this baby would be buried with another person who was being buried, the next available day. As far as I was aware, that is what the midwives all believed, because it probably come down. They would probably tell the same thing, and then they were telling students, and that's the way it was. I can't speak, as I say, for the senior staff who told me that, but as far as I would think, that's what they thought. That's the way everybody believed it was happening.
It's a complicated picture, as procedures for what happened after a stillbirth varied at individual hospitals, and so funeral and cremation arrangements differed too. It seems little to no information filtered through to those who needed to know.
I've been quite shocked, to be honest, at some of the stories. Very upsetting, and I feel very angry, and I would hate anybody to think that I knew anything about what happened to those babies. It's very disturbing, really.
During Yvonne's campaign to have mass grave areas marked with headstones, she discovered her son had been buried with 4 unnamed adults.
I think it was because it wasn't just babies. I think because I'd been told it was it's a baby garden, I thought, no, that just didn't feel right to me. My head was already saying, you know, I'm not going to leave him there. I just can't leave him there.
Baby Adam was at peace here, but Yvonne was not. And so she decided to move him. The process of exhuming baby Adam didn't disturb anybody else in the grave, so the Home Office approved Yvonne's exhumation request.
An easy decision for you to make?
Yeah, it was. It was very easy. The registrar at Dunham, she came and got me and she said, we've done it, we've got him. And that's when I asked, you know, what was the nameplate on his coffin. And then they put him in a new coffin and they'd moved him over to his new burial site. So all I had to do was come in and just watch the reburial. And here he is. I exhumed Adam from his original burial site, and this is his grave. And he's just next door to his grandma and granddad. So it felt a really appropriate place to actually rest him for the final time. The baby area, as it's called, is his legacy, because all the graves are now marked, and so all his fellow babies are actually being recognised, and they weren't before him. So yeah, I think it's his legacy. Yeah, and I'm really proud of him for that. I'm proud that, you know, we've managed to do so much, and that, you know, his life was, albeit short, wasn't wasted.
Despite Yvonne's achievements, formally marking shared graves is still restricted in many cemeteries.
I just feel so sorry for the parents, you know, that look at that and think, well, why can't that happen in my cemetery? But it can. It can. For any council to say, oh, well, that's the way it is, you know, that's the way it's always been, you know, if we all had to stick to that's the way it is, then nothing would ever change.
For so many, the pain and grief of losing a stillborn baby was frozen in time. But the enduring love and bravery of mothers like Lillian, Gina and Yvonne has helped to bring about important change and recognition, with the opportunity for parents and families to remember their missing babies.